Good morning, gang. Happy Thursday morning. So here we go again. We're going to discuss a little on the economic front of what's going to affect us and the dollar and everything. And there's quite a bit of different stuff that you got to put it all together here real quick. So, in case you didn't see this, which chances are most of you probably didn't, the Biden administration is now going to reinstate all the exemptions for the tariffs that were put on China under the Trump administration. Now, about 2/3 of those tariffs expired in 2020, okay? And so China wasn't paying as much to the United States to bring its crap in here. But there were 352 items that the tariffs were extended on. Now, the Biden administration has decided to cut those tariffs. So we're not going to charge the Chinese for competing with American products. Hey, America first, Joe. Okay. So, I mean, this comes from anything from heavy machinery to manufacturing components, consumer goods, TV screens, backpacks, bicycles, pillows, you name it. Okay. So we're going to get more made in China junk. That's going to be cheaper. And this is Joe's idea of stimulating our economy, bring in more cheap shit. Now, here's the problem, is we are getting into a world, again, just think of the Cold War again, where you have a split. We've talked about this before, an Eastern world and a Western world, and never the two shall cross. China is playing both ends against the middle. China wants those US dollars, but China also wants to support Russia. Okay? And not that I've got anything against good relationships between Eastern countries and Western countries, but not at the detriment to my life and your life. All right? So the US dollars go flowing into China, and then China turns around and buys Russian oil, Russian wheat, whatever, which helps fund war, any sort of war effort. Right now, just Ukraine. Who knows if it goes into the Baltics, Poland? We've talked about that. All right. So that being that, you got to cut the head off the snake. You can't just cut the tail off. You know, this is the problem that we have right now. The U.S. is so adamant about going after Russia because of Ukraine, and we're completely placating China, who's doing everything they can to end run around us and defeat the whole purpose of what the U.S. is trying to do, and the EU and NATO and the whole Western world, if you will. You put sanctions on Russia, but to get them to stop fighting in Ukraine, but none of the rest of the world, other than Europe, is abiding by them. Now, I totally get that. The U.S. does not make the decisions for all the rest of the world. That there's no question there. Just because we don't want to do business with a country doesn't mean somebody else can't, okay? We're not some all-powerful country here going, you're going to do what we say. That ain't the way it works, okay? I don't want an NWO like that either, where, the U.S. is just the dominant force. And a lot of times, sometimes we are, because, notice how the U.S. puts sanctions on another country, be it Cuba, be it Venezuela, be it Iran, be it China, be it Russia, whatever it would be, and it affects the country. Not a whole lot of countries putting sanctions on the U.S. that affect your life or my life. Okay, so there is a power thing, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, this is where we get into an issue, because, like I said, China's playing both ends against the middle. They're still going to buy Russian oil, Russian wheat, whatever it would be, to keep their economy going. And by keeping their economy going that way, they're going to continue to build stuff which we buy. So indirectly, the sanctions that we are putting on Russia don't do anything but hurt us, not Russia, okay? And it doesn't matter, just in this particular case, it's Russia. It could be any other country we put sanctions on. Now, go into the next step on this. And this is why I say we have a separation of East versus West. India still wants to buy Russian oil. It's cheap. Why not? Okay. I mean, if you have the choice between buying two exact same things, and I always use aspirin as an example because aspirin by law has to be exactly the same. So whether you buy generic aspirin or Bayer aspirin, by law, they have to be the exact same. Okay. Are you going to buy the one that cost you $1 or the one that cost you $4? It's the exact same thing. Okay. So I understand what India is saying is, hey, Russian oil is cheaper. We're going to buy that. Okay, great, no problem. But look at this. Most of Africa gets their food from Russia and Ukraine. A lot of Asia gets their food from Russia and Ukraine. Do you really think countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, Mozambique, South Africa, do you really think those countries are going, yeah, you know what? We're willing to starve just so we can comply with the whims of the West? Of course not. This is where it's going to affect us. What all of this is doing, these sanctions, which in the long run never work, okay? Maybe for short terms they do, but in the long run they never work. All this is doing is getting more hatred of the United States across the world and dividing the world that much further. You know, look at Saudi Arabia, for example, and the whole story's here. Saudi Arabia, big producer of oil. Saudi Arabia is cozying up with the Chinese lately, okay? Paying the Chinese for defense as opposed to the U.S. that they've been working with us for 50 years for the petrodollar, you know, in agreement that we would defend Saudi Arabia. Now all of a sudden they're cozying up with the Chinese, which we've talked about before, means now all of a sudden we have a petro yuan. Russia has come out and said that hostile countries, if you will, the UK, the US, the EU, anybody that wants to buy oil from Russia has to pay for it in rubles. Okay? What does that do? That starts to create a mini petro ruble. Now, why is that important? Well, because now, let's say India, if they want to buy oil from Russia, they need to have a stockpile of rubles to buy that oil, as opposed to have a stockpile of dollars. China, maybe they pay for it in rubles, maybe they pay for it in yuan, so they don't need as much in the way of dollars. Any of these countries now, you know, if Europe's got to pay for oil in rubles, they don't need to keep dollars. So this can start flooding dollars back in the market, which will crush the value of the dollar. This is what I talked about, about a week ago, about when we were talking about the petrodollar. All this kind of plays together, guys. And if the dollar starts not being the preferred currency in the world, the petrodollar, which it looks like that's where we're going, that we're going to start having the Wild West in regards to international trade, that destroys or significantly injures, let's put it that way, the U.S. economy. In other words, yours and my wallet. Hyperinflation, a recession, a possible depression. All this talk about, oh, what the U.S. is going to do, put yourself in a situation. We'll bring it into a smaller thing. Let's say, for example, your town, okay? Just because the mayor says everybody's got to do something, if it doesn't work for you, are you going to do it? No. If the mayor says, we want everybody to give $100 a month to the Parks Commission to put new playground equipment in there, and you don't have any kids, and you could use that $100 on something else, do you want to do it? No. It's the exact same thing with these other countries. This does not bode well for them to follow these U.S. sanctions. So therefore, they're not going to. And what does it do? It creates animosity amongst those countries saying the U.S. is trying to hurt us, not allowing us to buy food, to buy oil, to whatever. And we wind up with bigger problems. Now not like the Americans are loved across the world, regardless of what CNN and MSNBC want to tell you. Death to America chants don't just come out of Iran. They come out of a lot of countries. There's a lot of places where you don't want to go if you're an American, because they'll love your dollars, but they'll smile to your face and stab you in the back, no problem. But this is what we need to watch out for, guys. This is what the media will not tell you. They're like, oh, look, it's such a good thing. Biden's getting rid of the tariffs we put on China. All he's doing is feeding the snake. We need to cut the head off. No question. Pinball out.